Hello, thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I'm Louise Murray,
And I'm Victoria Hersberg.
and together, Victoria and I want to offer some guidelines to all of you who are interested in applying for a $100,000 grant that would be due June 10th of 2023. I want to begin by introducing ourselves and telling you a little about Impact100 Garden State. We're an all-woman and woman-led organization that funds local nonprofits. Each of our members donates $1,000 a year to fund $100,000 grants, so we pool our resources. Each year, we receive about 50 applications, and trained volunteers within our membership review the proposals to select finalists. Then the slate of finalists goes to all of our Impact100 Garden State members, who each votes on among the finalists to select the awardees of $100,000 grants. Since 2013, we're proud to say we have awarded $2.8 million to local nonprofits. Thank you. Now, our agenda for today is to explain the eligibility criteria, present an overview of the application. We want to give a shout out for our user-friendly application process. We also want to explain to you our code of ethics that we follow as we review the grants and conclude with some important dates. In terms of the eligibility criteria, I think it's helpful to think of this in three buckets, if you will. First, we want to explain what organizations are eligible. Secondly, we'll highlight what kinds of proposals are eligible. And we'll conclude with a clarification of the kind of expenses we will fund. In terms of eligible organizations, we require that every applicant be a 501c3 public charity in good standing. We also require that applicants provide current 990 Schedule A's, 2 years of audited or reviewed financial statements, and recent financials. Third, we require that all applicants are clear and have a check off and that they agree that should your organization win a $100,000 grant, you understand that the disbursement will be tailored to the specific design of your proposal, and we will mutually work with you in the disbursement of funds. Again, the night of our awards, we are not just handing over a $100,000 check. It's a process that is relatively brief, within a month, and then you're good to go. In terms of the proposals that we'll fund, we want you to describe a program that addresses an unmet need in one of the following areas: arts and culture, children and families, education, environment preservation and recreation, or health and wellness. So as you can see, our interests are very broad, and we recognize that within the 5 categories that I've just outlined, there may be some overlap, that children and families may be geared to health and wellness. We don't ask you to identify a specific category, but we offer this here to show the breadth of our interests. We're very specific, however, that the grant proposals must serve residents of Morris, Passaic, Somerset, Sussex, and/or Union counties. should you be headquartered outside of that area, this area, that's okay, as long as the proposal that you're submitting to Impact 100 Garden State specifically serves residents in one or more of the 5 counties. We also require that proposals be completed within 3 years, and there's a checkoff box on the online application indicating that the proposal has been approved by the CEO, executive director of your organization. In terms of the kinds of expenditures we will fund, we will fund compensation for staff and consultants that are allocated to the proposal. This is not general funding, but if you want to hire people to carry out your proposed program, Impact 100 will allow expenditures for compensation. We also allow expenditures for capital expenses, equipment, staff development, staff training, so long as these expenses are necessary to implement the proposal. And we want to also leave it open that if you have a need for other kinds of expenses that are directly related to the proposal, those expenses would be eligible. And I'll mention, for the sake of clarity, what expenses are ineligible. We will not fund debt reduction, interim or bridge financing, or endowment funding. We will not fund fundraising activities or events. We won't fund capital campaigns or private foundations. We also will not fund political, partisan, or religious activities. I want to be clear about the religious activities disqualification. If you visit our website, you will find that we have funded faith-based organizations. The faith-based organization submitted a proposal to us where the organization was very clear that the program was opened to all residents in the target community and that there was no expectation that any participant in the program would be required to attend religious services. So again, we will fund faith-based organizations so long as the program services are open to all. I think that it sums up the eligibility criteria. Our second agenda item is to present an overview of the application, and Victoria will lead us in that discussion. Thanks, Victoria.
Thank you, Louise. Before we get into the next topic item that you mentioned, on this one slide, we would like to share with you the characteristics we look for in an award-worthy grant proposal. First, empowering. How do you know the proposal addresses an unmet need? Regarding unmet needs, explain what individuals or your community should have in order to reach their full potential. For example, if your target population is experiencing food insecurity, the unmet need is providing access to nutritious food in order to reach their full potential. Strategic. Why are you taking the steps you described to address the unmet needs? What supportive information, data do you have? Accountable. What information will you collect to determine success? These are the metrics in your target goals. Finally, timely. Can the Impact 100 grant be spent within 3 years? To further understand and see examples of past Impact 100 Garden State award-winning programs that have these points, go to our website as shown at the below link. Now, as per the agenda, we're going to spend a couple minutes talking about the overview of the application and provide you with some helpful recommendations of our new revised application. Some of your responses in these 8 sections will have a limited word count. We are expecting articulate, focused, logically organized responses in this case. So now let's move on to the next slide that starts with the first of the 8 sections. General information. This is a basic contact information. Your organization's legal name, website, contact information, and social media handles. Section 2, tell us about your organization. First, A, mission statement, just a cut and paste, no word limit. B, significant accomplishments over the past 2 years. Show us how you succeeded during these unusual, trying times. C, priorities over the next 2 years. What would you like to accomplish in these 2 years? Help us understand where you are strategically going. D, community engagement. Basically, we want to see how you learn from your community and those you service. Section 3. This is an important 3-part section, which is your chance to convince the grant reviewers of the urgency of your need and excite them to want to learn more about your program. A, clarification if expansion or a new pilot program. We have no preference in this case. B, describe your proposal in a single essay that avoids repetition and addresses the following 5 topics. This is an important essay for you to get our grant reviewers to understand your vision by telling us in no more than 650 words the who, how, what, when, where of your program. We will view this as a strong response if you incorporate the following 5 components into a flowing narrative essay, rather than just answering each one separately. Number 1, describe narrative about your proposal. Describe your program project, tell us how it works. For this response and others, you are welcome to use a web link to further elaborate within your application. For example, let's say you're wanting to create a learning lab and basing it on some existing teaching studies that you would like us to know about. You can add that internet link into your proposal. 2, reason or reasons your proposal needed. If an expansion, what has happened thus far? What information do you have that indicates a need? If there is factual supporting information to support your position, you should share it with us to strengthen your response. Another way to look at this is, what is the problem you are solving and why should it matter? Number 3, description of the underserved target population. How many do you plan to serve and what are their primary characteristics? 4, unmet needs. We discussed that earlier. Can you provide information documenting the unmet need? Again, it will be a stronger proposal if you can give us some factual supportive details. Finally, number 5, expected outcomes. You want your target population, the greater community, to receive. Oh, how do you hope your target population will benefit? Do you anticipate any ripple effect within the community? At this
Yes.
point, Louise would like to elaborate on this for
Yes.
you.
Well, thank you, Victoria. You've really provided a nice summary of the topics that we're interested in reading about and learning in the 650 word text box. In terms of expected outcomes, we want to say, how will people benefit? Do you anticipate that people will have access to healthy food? Do you anticipate, is your goal that preschool children will have achieved their developmental milestones that are age appropriate? In terms of elder care, that's your area of service, what are you interested that those whom you work with will have more social activities, can maintain their independence? If you're working in the health field, what specific health indicators are you hoping to see improved? In terms of the environment, how will you, if you want to submit a proposal on the environment, what kind of data will you collect to see that the environmental goals you set forth have been achieved? We also want to mention here that in our 10 years of operation, we have noticed that strong proposals often identify additional benefits. For example, when nonprofits work with parents, children benefit. In other instances, we found that when nonprofits work with a few individuals in the community, that community can begin to become empowered through the leadership of those that were participants in a particular program. So we really hope you'll consider ripple effects. Another kind of example of a ripple effect is that where some of our successful proposals have implemented new models of service delivery. And these new models, of course, can be a benefit to the broader nonprofit community. So please consider the expected outcomes as broadly as makes sense for your particular population. So thank you. It's often a challenge, but we know everyone's up to the task. So we'll go on to the next slide. We're interested in knowing the specific steps that you plan to take to implement your proposal if you're awarded the $100,000. Here we're looking for the key activities. Are you going to have to hire staff? Are you going to have to train people? Are you going to have to conduct outreach? What kind of timetable are you proposing to get to the nitty-gritty of delivering the service? And for each activity, we ask that you indicate a time frame. Is it 1 month? Is it 2 months? Is it a quarter or 2 quarters? It's up to you how you specify the time frames, but we are interested in getting that sense of the rollout of the program. And now we'll go on to further overview. Accountability and outcomes. And this goes back to our conversation about expected outcomes. How will you define, how will you measure access to healthy food? How will you measure young children's growth to achieve their age-appropriate developmental milestones? How will you measure continued independence among a frail population? And then what is your plan for collecting the data? Will you interview participants? Will you make observations? Will you rely on third-party reports from teachers, healthcare providers, or other resources? And secondly, we're very interested in learning from you how you plan to use the information to further build on your program. What do you hope to learn after implementing your proposed program? So that's another topic that's of interest to us. And how are we doing now? We'll get to our 5th part of the application, and it's your turn now, Victoria.
Thank you, Louise. So at this point, Section 5 is budget. It's a two-parter. The first one is you will have an opportunity to load your budget, and we offer a template that is online for you to look at that we encourage you to use. On the next slide, I'll go into more detail. The second part of this is a new staffing table that we've embedded into the application. It's basically a table set up by each individual or hire, and within each one, there are several company fields. The first one is name new hire. Next is position title, then credentials, qualifications, and finally percentage of time devoted to the position. There is no word limit for each of these fields. And if there is a new hire, we do want you to please indicate that on the chart with or without the name of the employee. Okay. At this point, I'm sharing with you a budget template of what we would ideally like to see. This is going to help us understand in detail how much money you need and how do you plan to finance the project in the future. We highly recommend you use this layout of our budget template so that all the necessary components are structured in a manner that is easy for the grant reviewers to understand how much money is needed for your project. If it's too difficult for them or too time consuming for them to review it, it could reduce your chances for further consideration. So let's first start with the revenue section. We want to know all sources of funding and how much money will be used, starting with Impact 100. Underneath, we'd like you to list all those other organizations that are providing funding. It's important for us to know at what stage are you in obtaining this. Is the money already been committed? Is there a pending response going on right now, or does it need further approval? Next is your expenses. We need to see all types of expenses. For personnel, it's important for us to see the position. If you have the name of the individual, that would be helpful, and the percentage of her time. This is somewhat redundant to what is going to be on the table I just told you about, but that table is providing us with additional information that's not there, but we would like to be able to match it up. Next column. The column is your total program budget, the revenue and the expenses. Then the next section that we want to see is the Impact 100 budget. You can break it up in whatever time frame you're comfortable with, but we need to see it to total up to the total $100,000. And within this, for expenses, we ask you then to show us of the $100,000, the amount of money being allotted for each of your expense categories, and then tell us that percentage of the total amount that you're going to need. So for example, for Mary Smith, throughout the program, she's going to get a total salary of $10,000, but of that, $6,000 or 60% of her salary is coming from Impact. And we'd like you to do that for each of the categories under expenses. The final aspect I want to show you is comments. Don't hesitate to use it. It's to your advantage to give us whatever information you think is important for us to understand in detail about your finances. The more you can clarify for us certain points you think is important for us to totally understand the use of your money, the better it is for you at this point. All right, so that's the budget. Next, Louise is going to talk to you about Section 6.
Yes. This may or may not apply to you, but we, in our 10 years of experience, we have funded many proposals where the organization plans to cooperate, to partner with other organizations. We use the word other entity to show the breadth. We also encourage joint applications. Our interest in Impact 100 Garden State is that within a month after our award ceremony on June 8th, you will, the successful grant recipients will be able to implement their program. So if you anticipate that you are going to be partnering with schools, hospitals, law enforcement, any other social service organization, we want to know that in the proposal. If your proposal advances, we will ask you to produce memorandum of agreement that school, hospital, police precinct, or other social service agency is committed to partnering with you, to make referrals, to offer workshops, whatever it is that you're proposing. And we would ask you for that information in March 2023, should your proposal be advancing. If you need to obtain permits because you want to launch some kind of capital improvement, we would ask you to identify what permits are needed, and then later we'll clarify your status of how you're going about getting those permits. I'd also like to spend a minute encouraging you to consider joint applications. Joint applications are those where two 501c3 organizations share the $100,000 grant. In 2014, we awarded a joint grant to the former Morristown Community Soup Kitchen, now known as Nourish, with APGAR, America Grow a Row, for a very innovative feeding program and farmers market. You can take a look at that on our grant page, where we introduce you to our past awardees. So thank you. And Victoria will conclude this part with these sections.
So now section 7, financial information. We're basically just asking you for funding sources for the last 2 years, 2022, 2021. I won't go into real detail about the next section 8, which is just required financial documentation, as you can see here. Where it says C&D year 1, year 2 of audited and reviewed financial statements, you'll find both on the application and also on our website a table in order to assist you with the needed dates of these financial statements based on 3 common year financial end dates. Now I'd like to talk to you about the application itself. You now know about the parts of it in reference to the application, but let us now get into, once you finally log in into our new eligibility criteria and application questions. At this point, being considerate of your time, we've broken up the online application process for you to first determine if you meet our eligibility criteria. It is set up so that we can first determine if you meet our eligibility criteria. These are yes/no questions. If you meet our criteria and agree to certain terms, you will be given access to our application form. So step 2 is a form. Just to tell you a couple helpful items that are in there. There is a help button on the top left where you can get questions to answer something that you may not see at the time to be easily understandable. And also there's an email address that if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. We look at it quite frequently. 2, there's a save progress button. This is extremely important. If you close out of this, you will lose the information if you don't keep saving. So this is your best friend. So use it a lot. You can come in and out of the application as often as you want. Upon submitting the application, you will receive an email with a copy of your submission confirming receipt. Next, this is new software, so everybody is going to have to create a new username and password. Also, you'll see on the first page of the login is a clicking button that you can download a copy of the proposal in order to assist you in preparing your answers before you actually type them into the application. Now, Louise will talk about the Code of Ethics and close up our presentation.
Yes, thank you, Victoria. Victoria and I really believe in this. We've served at the nitty-gritty grant review level, and we are very aware of the pledges that we make to you, the nonprofit community. Each trained volunteer reviewer has indicated that she will keep each applicant's name and all proposal information confidential. Our president and treasurer do not review grants. They don't know who's applied and what the content is. We're really very proud of our confidentiality commitment. Secondly, we work very diligently to avoid conflicts of interest. In order to become a grant reviewer, you need to identify all the nonprofits where you have any relationship to either board members or staff. And we're very careful to assign proposals where you don't have a conflict. We want you to know this, and we hope that knowing this, you'll have more confidence in submitting an application to us. I'd like to talk about important dates. January 20th at noon, we're closing down the submission process. So please get your applications in on time. By March 30th, every applicant will be informed of their grant status. If applicants are advancing, we will request a site visit to your organization. And as part of that site visit, we'll give you about 2 weeks advance notice of any questions that we want to cover during our time with you. By May 15th, all those who received a site visit will be notified about whether or not they're advancing to the finalist status. Between May 15th and May 30th, finalists work with their people who review their proposal to prepare a presentation for impact. And that's a really close relationship. We think it's very productive. From June 1st to June 7th, our impact members will vote to select awardees. And June 8th, we'll have our annual meeting to announce our awardees. So in closing, Victoria and I want to really emphasize that on behalf of Impact, we deeply appreciate your work in the community. And we offer our sincerest wishes for your success and encourage you to apply for a $100,000 grant. Victoria mentioned that we monitor this email very frequently through January 10th, and we'll get back to you. And if we need to do some research, we'll let you know. It's going to take a couple of days for us to give you an answer. And again, we'd encourage you to meet our previous awardees at this website, which is easily accessible from our homepage through the menu selections. So thanks again. You hung in with this video, and we really wish you all the best. Thank you.